We'll now see the nine substances in more detail. Let's now see earth, water, fire, and air. So Kanad goes Dravya by Dravya. He defines each element, detailing its special combinations of qualities. For example, the qualities of earth are color, taste, smell, and touch. Water are color, taste, touch, liquidity, and smoothness, which is snigdhata. Of fire are color and touch. Of air is only touch. Air doesn't have color, taste, smell. Liquidity is a special quality of water, as other things like butter, metals, or wax become liquid only when they are heated, but water is naturally liquid. How do we know that air exists? Because air is invisible, Vaisheshik says that it can be known through an inference of the type of samanyato drashta from certain common experiences, such as feelings of touch and motion. We infer a substance, an imperceptible substance that should have those qualities. So, from this, we infer that air, something like air exists. Because air has motion, quality, and does not inhere in any other substance, so air must itself be a substance, and air is also eternal. And the sutra also says that Vayu or the air is supported by scripture as well. So both reason and Shruti confirm the existence of air. The sutras also infer the existence of other selves, other people, people other than me. How? From the fact that there is a conventional system of names that is already in use, and it is not invented by a person on his own, on his or her own. That implies other conscious beings existed before a person who introduced those names, so that person can infer that there are other beings besides him or her as well. How do we know that there is ether or akash, which is the substrate of sound? We cannot infer just from the fact that things can move into the space which was previously empty space, because motions always rest in the moving object itself, not in a second substance. So, if we see a thing enter an unoccupied region, it doesn't by itself prove that there's something in that region, because motion always rests in that object itself, not in the second substance. So, ether is introduced here in Vaisheshik as a hypothetical substance. Sound is a quality. It is not a quality of any tangible substance. So, there must be any other substance which has sound as its quality, and that substance is called ether. So, ether is, or Akash is a, first of all, it's a substance. Akash is also eternal, and Akash is one. Then we have the treatment of time and space. Time is defined as that which gives us notions like youth in the young, simultaneity, quickness, and slowness. So, time or kal is also one, like being. Time is the cause of all non eternal things. Because, why non eternal things? Because whatever it is the cause of, they arise and perish all within time itself. Eternal things are beyond these temporal changes. Then we have a treatment of space or dish. This gives us the notion of far, near. This is also one like being, And the apparent multiplicity of directions like east or west comes from the relative positions of sun and earth. It doesn't come from multiple spaces. Now we have a treatment of doubt and debate about sound's eternality. Now, before we proceed on whether sound is eternal, we should analyze, as done by Canard, about doubt, which is the sunshine. Doubt arises when a thing is perceived only in a general way and we ignore or the specifics are not being made clear. It can also arise if we remember some features but we don't see them now, or when we see a feature which has a resemblance to something which we have seen before, or when an object appears in one way but it also seems to fit something description of something else, or what when what is seen we don't grasp it and we are not sure if our perception is correct. Now, for Canard first, as we have talked about earlier, Canard gives arguments for non-eternality of sound, that sounds arise and vanish, but he also gives certain arguments for eternality. So he accepts at last that sound is eternal. Then, in the uh, there is again a treatment on the existence of the soul. The knowledge of sense objects in Indriyarth Gyan is the reason by which the existence of self is proved. What does it mean? We start from the fact of knowledge. We experience colors, sounds, pleasures, memories, pains, the awareness of I. Now, these cannot belong just to the body because the body is solely matter. Body changes. Body can't be the unified owner of a continuous experience stream. Therefore, Atman has to be posited as the substratum of cognition. Atman is the enjoyer of pain and pleasure, right? And Atman is the agent of actions. So, self is ultimately directly perceived as I, but the inference from knowledge, this is how we give it a formal logical support. So notice that they directly posit existence of soul because the experiences cannot be of the body and the self is directly perceived as I. Now, the later Nyāya-Vaiśeṣika commentators, they systematize this into the standardized argument that since there is knowledge, and knowledge must inhere in a substance, and that substance is not the body, it's not the senses, not the mind alone. Therefore, there is an existent, distinct self. And then we have types of inferences being discussed. So there are three types of inferences based on connections between existence and non-existence. First is from non-existence to existence. Second is from existence to non-existence. And third is existence to existence. We'll see that these things in much detail when we tackle one issue at a time in far more depth. Now we are just seeing an overview of the books of the darshanas. And these three require that we know the two terms which we are connecting in way of drawing an inference. And this requirement of known connection is called prasiddhi purusharthatva. So, but in midst of these, we have many fallacies, two fallacies in particular, anupadesh and sandigdh. If the connection between the two is unknown, the middle term becomes anupadesh, that is, becomes invalid. If the connection between the two is doubtful, then the connection becomes sandigdha, that is, there is a doubtful middle. How do we infer the soul from cognition? We infer the Atman. This is as per the Vaisheshik Sutra. We infer the Atman because we observe that cognition arises when self, mind, senses, and objects are in contact. If cognition arises, then it must be the case that soul exists. This is a correct inference and it is not fallacious. How do we infer other selves then? Because when I have contact of sense, mind, soul, I have cognition and we observe others' behavior as if they also have such cognitions. Therefore, other selves exist. We infer similarly. How do we infer mind then, which is manas? Vaisheshik claims mind is an single atomic and non-eternal substance. Why? Because cognition does not arise simultaneously of multiple senses. Because only one sensation is known at a time, so it must be the case that the internal organ that links self to senses must be one at a time contacting. Therefore, manas is inferred and not perceived directly. Then we have inference of soul from breath, blinking, and mental functions. These all imply a single unified owner, and this unity cannot be explained by body alone, so soul must exist. And there is an objection raised to this stream of logic, that is, objection can be when I see a man, I don't directly see his soul. Then how can we infer soul about him, about that man? Even if the reply to this is, even if others' souls are not perceived, scriptures do affirm their soul. And Vaisheshika also says, we don't need scriptures. I is a direct perception of soul, and we experience I. And the same existence is strengthened by inference. And then we have, so Vaisheshik uh, allows direct awareness of self, and this is where Vaisheshik slightly differs from Nyaya. When we say, I am Yagnadatta or I am Devdatta, this shows self is directly perceived in the I, and inference only strengthens this direct experience. And what Vaisheshika says that soul is one in essence and individuality arises from special limitations, upadhis like body, desires, and karma. Scriptures also affirm this. Then about the five elements, Vaisheshik says that anything that exists but has no cause must be eternal. For example, space, time, akash, self, and atoms are eternal. But whatever is produced by a cause like color, taste are non-eternal. For example, color. Color is a quality. It is compounded, is produced from material sources. Therefore, it is non-eternal. But even though air is great and it is made of parts, air has no color. This means merely being extended or composed does not guarantee color. Color appears only when the correct conditions exist. What are these correct conditions? Fire, light, and object properties. Then smell is known by earth, taste is known by water, color by fire, touch by air. So we have a classical Vaisheshik theory of correspondence of element and sense. And Other qualities like pleasure, pain, separateness are number or are perceived through mind. Then we have a treatment of atoms. The text says that earth, air, fire, water, they exist in three forms, which are one, body, second, sense organ, and third, object. Atoms of the same element cannot combine with atoms of other element. Elements do not mix, but it can be the case that atoms of different elements may combine when one acts as the central nucleus or upastambhaka. So what are the rules then? Atoms of same type make basic substances, and atoms of different types combine only if one forms a central support. Bodies can be produced in two ways. Either it can be produced from ovaries, which is ordinary birth, or bodies can also be produced by special dharma. For example, beings with divine bodies. These bodies arise because of special karmic merits. Vaisheshik recognizes five types of motion, that is karma. First is upward, second downward, third contradiction, fourth expansion, and fifth horizontal. So remember that the karma as we perceive it, it's not the case in Vaishik. Vaishik is slightly different. Karma here is motion. For example, we have a case of hand and flail. When threshing grain with a flail, the movement isn't produced by contact of soul, it is produced by impact. And the upright motion occurs from imparted force, not directly from soul contact. And how does Gurutva come into picture here? If the flail falls when not held, it's due to heaviness, which is a special quality, Gurutva, in earth atoms. And upward or side motions, how do they arise? Upward or side motions arise from specially directed actions or volitions produced by dharmas or the special merits. Magnetism is caused by adrishta karta, as we have seen earlier. What is the explanation of inertia? That is veg sanskar. For example, arrow movement. Arrow movement first acquires a motion samskar from its initial impact. Afterwards, it continues moving on its own inertia, that is veg samskar. And when that inertia is depleted, the arrow falls down due to heaviness. Then we have mention of certain special natural phenomena. All special natural phenomena which don't have any clear physical explanation, as we have seen earlier, are assigned to Adrisht. Adrisht's importance is that without Adrisht, there would be no contact between self and body or mind. And sans this contact, no rebirth or no experience of pleasure or pain is possible. Moksha is the phenomenon of cessation of concept of soul, cessation of contact of soul with mind, senses, or objects. When mind stops fluctuating and it rests in soul, then we have no pain. Time, space, and ether are inactive conditions. They don't help nor do they obstruct liberation. Then we have certain comments on Dan, which is gifts. Giving gifts to the deserving is not from empathy, as the later Smritis would say, but because we should do so because scriptures prescribe it. Gifts create adrishta, which create purification, which further lead to pleasure, prosperity, final liberation. Are qualities eternal? Some qualities are eternal when their substratum is. For example, space is eternal because its qualities, direction, for instance, direction is eternal. Atoms are eternal because their intrinsic qualities are eternal. Similarly, Earth is visible because it's an aggregate of many atoms. Now, we have a treatment of atomic size and great size. Atoms, Anu, and the space, time, self, and ether. These are called Mahat, which are very supremely great. Mind is of atomic size. And what is the shape of an atom? It is parimandala or round. There is a notion of unity and duality. The notion of unity causes the notion of duality. If we don't apprehend or understand one, how can we understand two? And contact and vibhag. Contact means samayog, disjunction is vibhag. Contact may arise through one object moving or two objects moving. Disjunction arises similarity. But cause and effect do not have a contact. Why? We had earlier, way back in the first audio, we had discussed about the criticism of Buddhism's uh, momentariness, that cause and effect cannot exist simultaneously. Therefore, no contact or disjunction can connect the cause and effect. Soul and manas are not perceptible. Qualities like pleasure, pain are perceived by contact with the object. Earth causes smell, water causes taste. These we have seen. Uh, then we have a treatment of negation very prominently, that uh, uh, non-existence or abhav. Four kind of abhav. One is pragabhav, which is prior non-existence. Second is dhava sambhav, which is the posterior non-existence. Third is the anyonya bhav, which is the mutual negation. And last is the atyanta bhav, which is the absolute negation. We'll see these in detail once we take one issue at a time and elaborate on it. It's just a brief summary as of now. Even existent things may become non-existent, and uh, memory's gap shows negation. For example, the pot is absent. And uh, for some certain yogins, that is, who have some certain special spiritual powers, negations can be directly perceived. Then we have nature of hetu or reason. Anything connected as cause effect or coexistent, or if two objects are inseparably connected, they can serve as hetu or reason for inference. Hetu must show that this is associated with that, need not be causation, can be coexistent or inseparably connected as well. Inference yields knowledge, and verbal scriptural knowledge also yields knowledge. Then we have a treatment of vidya and avidya. Avidya is false knowledge due to defects in senses, misobservation or non-observation, or wrong expectancy. Then we have the fact that pleasure and pain are not cognitions. Why? Because they are not related to doubt or certainty. Pleasure and pain are feelings, not knowledge. Then we have uh, some discussion on Vaisheshik discussion of causality, which is a dravya can be a cause not only when it is the effect or the material cause, but also when the effect inheres in it, or when it is in contact with the cause of effect. For example, the heat of fire. The heat is a quality in fire, but since that heat produces the burning effect, the quality is also counted as a cause. So Vaisheshik has a very general and generous notion of cause, inherence in the effect, inherence in the cause, contact with other causes can all count as causal. So, Vedic works that show no visible effects are still causes of prosperity and liberation because the Vedas enjoin them. Hence, the Vedas are valid. So, the invisible adrishta effects of ritual, what do they do then? These invisible effects, they confirm the Vedic authority.